my friend summed up Boss 101. He goes, you guys have made like Gameception. He goes, there's so much stuff going on in your game that it's like games inside games inside games.
So, to start this off, why don't you introduce yourself,
Yes.
and then give us kind of the convention pitch for Boss 101.
Yeah, well, my name is Tim Donley. I've been working in video games for, I want to say it's well over 20 years now. I initially started in toy design and then moved into video games in the mid or little early 90s. So started at big companies. I've worked at Interplay, Sony. I've done, recently I worked at Vigil Games here in Austin and worked on the Darksiders series, so Darksiders 1 and 2. After that, Vigil closed and ended up working on my own stuff. Just decided, I was looking for jobs, so the way this came about, the way Boss 101 and just sort of this whole scene came about was I was looking for work, and during that period, I ended up looking into just like, because I rarely do you find a game person that doesn't somehow entertain the idea of doing their own thing at some point. They've all, I won't say we all and just kind of lump everybody together, but there's generally, you could talk to some video game person and they'll say, well, the first game I played inspired me and I've always wanted to do my own version or something. It was a little bit of that. So I ended up looking at game engines and decided, well, I'll just try this. I'm going to basically at the time I had a bunch of job offers and I was about to take them, and it was, I was going to move back to California, back to where I grew up in LA and Orange County area. So I was gonna go back and just, I live in Austin. I have a house, and just had this really interesting situation where I was like, this is kind of that perfect moment to, maybe now is the time. And then, I'm not 20 anymore. I'll be 48 this year. So it's like I kind of just said, that day is probably here now. Maybe I shouldn't just wait around for, another 10 years, because it's amazing. Like I love it. I feel like I do when I was 22, but it's some kind of realize, well, God, if you never take that leap, you're never going to do it. Like there's never. I think for me, I realized there's never going to be that perfect day. There's never going to be the perfect amount of money in the bank. There's never going to be, Microsoft's never going to knock on my door with a big sack of cash and just say, here, go ahead and work on whatever you want, or Square or Sony or anybody. It just isn't going to happen. What you're going to have to do is just make it happen. So basically did it, and for the first, this would have been 2013. For the beginning of 2013, I started working on, doing games all by myself, web games, and just programming and art and everything. And, one of them was Boss 101, or a version of Boss 101, a web game. And you can see it on Armor Games and Congregate and Newgrounds. And it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun doing it. I made a few more games, and I had some characters from Boss 101, Steve and Max, the two main people in it. And at one point I realized, well, maybe we could expand it a little. So, I basically spent a little while doing my own, all by myself, making all the art, making everything sound, all that stuff went in, and it ended up, I was like, man, maybe Boss 101 could be a little bit bigger, a little bit more Boss 101, like have all the character. But so what happened is I looked at some game engines, GameMaker, Unity, GameMaker one engine, Unity another, there's Construct, and there's a few other game engines, but thought, I ended up going to the forums for a few of them, and one of them was GameMaker, and I ended up finding a guy here in Austin. He's making a game with GameMaker, and he pretty much convinced me to go to that. Now that leads all into Boss 101.
Yeah.
And Boss 101, to me, it's I thought about it. I think it's one way to put it is it's sort of Adventure Time meets Gradius. So you got kind of a side-scrolling game, but there's like more to it than that. It's to really just say it's a side-scrolling shooter. I look at it like this. I think of the Boss 101 universe, like, and again, I'm what I'm about to say is just to make it a simple comparison,
sure.
Not to say it's as on the same echelon as these things, but if you look at maybe the Harry Potter universe, or if you look at something like Adventure Time, they have a universe. You could make a Harry Potter video game, but that you could have the Harry Potter books, the video games, all that stuff. And I look at Boss 101, this game that's about to come out, as sort of just one little story in that universe about some people in it. It's not like it's the end-all be-all telling of everything that's ever going to happen. It's kind of giving people a glimpse. And if, depending on how it goes, you could tell a lot of stories. You could tell, arguably a first-person shooter type story. Right. You could tell a different, all sorts of different stuff. But what we really wanted to do with this is have the fun of an arcade game, have the fun of a shooter. You've got all the upgrades, the equipment, and all that stuff, but also really just have the fun of like kind of two buddies just blasting.
Yeah.
And that's the main characters, Steve and Max. Steve being a jetpack, a robotic jetpack, and Max being just a kid. And it's something that I thought I've been told, and I don't. It's hard for me to step away from the game.
Sure.
But I've been told Boss 101 has a lot of like what people consider my personality in it. So when you see it and you read some of the comments and the jokes that they say are, well, again, arguably jokes, but if you read it, you'll see stuff that it's just my personality. It's like what I think is funny. And a lot of times when I play a game or when I watch a movie, I'm always asking, why do they do the stupidest things? And
right.
So in this game, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say it's all just fourth wall breaking and just that self-referential stuff, but it's a lot of it is just we're really looking to make them people, like they're actually people experiencing stuff. And we're telling this story of like these two guys that come together, and the whole story starts with Max and his brother. Max is the boy. His brother's in the hospital. His brother's like some BMX X Games guy, and he's broken his leg, and you go to the hospital with your Steve the jetpack, and your brother's like, hey man, you're like, dude, I'm so sorry about it, you broke your leg, what do you, it's so bad. And the brother's like, I don't worry about it, I've broken other bones, who cares? He goes, you know what I want for his birthday's coming up, he goes, you know what I really want is just a cool video of an adventure that you guys go on. And it's funny because you're sort of looking up to your brother, and the jetpack even realizes kind of the ridiculousness of it. He's like, your brother's like, man, why don't you just take a video of one of you guys' adventures? You guys go on all these greatest space adventures. And he's like, it's not that cool. You do the cool stuff. And he's like, and even the jetpack is like, kind of like, we do fly in space. We do pretty awesome things. Like you're really downplaying us a little bit. But the whole point is, the game kind of gets kicked off in that direction where it starts off pretty small, but just as all great movies do, it sort of veers at one point. Like immediately you get sucked into this whole like giant robotic space war, and it ends up being sort of the basis for, you kind of come back to the thread of you and your brother through the whole thing where you're visiting him in the hospital as he's getting better, and you're kind of finding out about this giant robotic civilization.
The gameplay I've seen and the stuff I've seen about this game, in that it is a story-driven shooter, and it seems to me that it's it seems pretty personal to me. There's a lot of heart in this game, and I kind of wanted to find out, you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but where that's coming from and what kind of challenges come up in dealing with a story like that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because I feel like that's really what we're going for overall. Like there's, first of all, I should say it's definitely a team effort. Boss 101 is on this go around. It's three people. There's myself. There's Joshua, who's doing the code. He's working in game. We're working in Game Maker, and then there's Minone, who's helping out with the art and animation. I do art and animation also, but there's it's a whole group. And what the great thing about it is that we've all kind of agreed and come together on the stuff you're talking about, which is when we looked at it first, we could have been done, let's say, over a year ago if we were just doing a shooter and not really trying to add in any story. And I'll give you a comparison of a game that I've seen that's out there now that Boss 101 wouldn't have been this, but it would have been on that level in my mind. And again, there's nothing wrong with this game. There's a game called on Steam right now called Star Mazer DSP. Yeah. A great game. Yeah. Awesome. It's got a lot of charm. You get a feeling there's some kind of universe happening there. And I think that where we were at a year ago is not, again, Star Mazer's in early access, so it's not a direct comparison, but I feel like they're kind of going for the same thing, and we just looked at that and said, okay, we're kind of in that place, but let's just blow it out. Let's just make it
big.
Yeah, let's go big. Well, because the thing is, if you're going to put in a year, 2 years of your time, like our comment is, nobody really cares how long the game took. They only care that it's good. They don't care that you took 5 years or 10 years or 5 minutes. And you kind of have two games at either end of the spectrum. Let's say on one end, there's the games that are maybe pure gameplay, and arguably, again, this is on my own opinion scale, not a worldwide scale, but on that end, one game stands above all, which is probably Tetris, which is probably the most pure gameplay game there is. There isn't. It's hard to think of a game that, other than just like throwing rocks at somebody, that you just it's really just about that's all you're doing is rotating blocks. There's some kind of crazy Russian music going, but pretty much it's pure gameplay. There's no. That's it. And on the other end, you may look at games like the far end on the other side could be you could go as far out as like if you're looking at single player, maybe a Skyrim or Fallout or something, where they're just these pure story, almost pure, or maybe even if you want to go even esoteric, you could go like Papers, Please or something, where you're kind of getting sort of these almost story-driven games.
Right, where the mechanics aren't the main feature, it's more that the mechanics serving the story. Sure.
But like I said, the biggest deal was just to not deny the game when the game is clearly pointing in a direction. Like when you do something like a Pets, or when you do something like a little arcade game, we were just like, well, let's just do what people would expect, like I would expect, or you would expect from a game when you play it. Like, again, like the easy example is the Pets or the hats. And I feel like the more that stuff we can add, the more charm we can add to the game.
Absolutely.
The better. I mean, I look at games like Starbound and Starbound and even Stardew Valley is a good one. It's just so charming. I mean, it's just added so much. Like, it's just, you could tell the person that made it loved making games. Same thing with Undertale. Like, I'm just impressed by the fact that you can tell when somebody loves doing it. So we've really poured everything into Boss 101, and ideally it shows. It shows.
I think it does. It does. There's a lot of character there. I did want to touch on one mechanic that I think is really, really cool in the game, and kind of find out where it came from and how it developed. And that's this whole idea of creating the bosses you're fighting.
Yeah.
This boss creator that's in Boss 101. So, like I said, where did that come from? How early in development did it show up? And then what kind of challenges did you run into in putting that in place?
Yeah, the Mega Boss was in the original web version of Boss 101, and it was, I think the idea really was just about doing something a little different, because, in other words, you could just roll a boss and get a boss you want. Now, obviously, right away, as soon as you say you can roll your own boss, there's a question of like, well, why wouldn't I just roll a really easy boss? And it kind of, we've worked it so that there's a general progression that happens per level anyway. So if you're on level 30 and roll, let's say, a particular set of boss parts, that inherently will be a stronger boss than the level 1 version, if it was exactly the same. So we did that. We did a basic level of thing, but the other thing we did is we've done some things that kind of say, if you've played a boss part already, so in other words, maybe you've encountered, for whatever reason, early in the game you decided you got a boss head and it was a flame head, and you're like, I don't like this, I'm going to roll again. You get another one. But whatever boss part you do pick, because it's easy, maybe you're like, I've got this lightning head, I've got a Grub destroys lightning heads, I'm going to take that. Well, the way the game works now is that head becomes a little less likely to be picked again. So in other words, you kind of can do this thing where I would never say we're never going to put you in a situation where you're screwing yourself, but you're definitely going to do things like, if you decide to make it easier for you early, that thing is probably going to come back later anyway. So you kind of get that dilemma of like, you're going to have to make decisions at some point. But that's the fun of it. I mean, I think
that's the challenge of it. That's what makes it interesting.
Yeah, and that's kind of a neat thing where you can go. That was always the idea of the Make a Boss, is to give the player something where he's got sort of this Sophie's Choice thing where he can go, I can re-roll this boss, or I can look at what I've got to equip. And either one of those choices, in a way, is equally valid in some level. Like, you could just say, kind of go the easy route and go, well, I'll just re-roll the boss until I get something I like, slot machine attitude. And that's fun, too, this fun. But then there's also the moment where you can say, well, let me just take a minute here, and then go through my equipment.
You can be strategic about it, sure.
Yeah, and I think that for us, it's sort of letting the game be what it is. Story-wise, what we've done in terms of, like, how we're kind of letting the player in on, like, why are you even being able to make a boss, is the way we tell it is we've hacked, these robots are taking over, this robot civilization is like taking places across the galaxy, and what they do is they send these giant boss-making machines down onto the planet, and the idea would be it analyzes the planet, it analyzes the defenses, and it spits out the best attack possible. So what we've done is we're saying we're hacking into that system and allowing us to override the natural, like, selection thing. So we're basically saying, yeah, we're kind of overriding something that would otherwise be
still going to make a boss, but it's not necessarily
going to make the boss that's the most efficient for that planet, but it's going to make one that you sort of have hacked in and played with. And that's the story behind it, but the idea, though, is to really, like I said, I love those, for me, I just love those moments where you kind of have to take a second and just look at your equipment to kind of go forward. And then sometimes you just want to say, you know what, I got an awesome flipping gun.
Let's try it. Yeah.
Give it a go. And there's just that fun. It's that fun sometimes of getting pasted or pasting something and going, like, really good. Again, that's the theory behind it. And, as we play the game, it seems to bear out that it's a pretty fun thing, especially because you really, we did a calculation. I think there's 100, it's more than 100, it's trillions. There's, like, a lot of combinations of bosses. Sure. Like, I don't really think there's an easy chance of you getting the same regular boss twice in any game. In fact, I doubt that if you played a lot of rounds, I don't think you would ever see the same boss.
Kind of shifting gears a little bit from talking specifically about Boss 101, and kind of getting a little bit more about you personally as a dev.
Sure.
We found the kind of a cool way to learn about that is asking people what they play just for fun. Obviously, as you said, you're playing a lot of Boss 101, but what other games either are big influences for you, or are just games you really like playing these days?
Yeah, I've been playing. Well, it's funny because the Steam sale. I'm playing PC games. I have my history started with PC games. I started developing on PC, but then I did console stuff for a while. But mostly, I'd say that some of the games I've played a ton of in the last few months. Like, the Steam sale came and I was playing this game called. It's just random. I was playing. It's called Windward, and it was a game about.
I loved Windward.
Oh my god! Yeah. I played that game. That game reminded me of, like, the funnest parts of the new Sid Meier Pirates game, where you're just, like, sailing around and blowing things away. I was like, man, I got a lot of that. I love that game. And it's funny.
Really solid game with a good concept behind it, and just pulled it off perfectly.
Yeah, it was like a flawless execution. I was surprised. Like, after the Steam sale, there were, like, a couple hundred people online at all times, so you could play these really fun games of, like, you're whaling on other pirate ships. It's just. But there's something about the community was very nice. It was just a cool group of people, and it was a lot of fun to play. But I played the heck out of that game, and some of the games I just enjoy playing, or I played a lot of the. I don't even necessarily call them indie games, but I love pixel games, like pixel art games, or I should say, games with that art style. I think it's fantastic. I loved Enter the Gungeon. I thought, I played Nuclear Throne and stuff. It was super fun. Stardew Valley, all that stuff, Undertale. Those were all great games. Just a really fun. I tend to gravitate towards the games I feel have a lot of heart behind them. I feel like that people that you could tell in somebody. There's a vibe, and I think players. I know me as a player, I can pick it up. You can tell when a game is just this wash, rinse, repeat type game where.
Absolutely.
And again, I don't want to pick on other devs or other games, because I think that every game is made with the intent of these guys are trying to do something here special. But I think the deal is you get to a certain point in development and you got to ask yourself, are we going to take it to the next level? Or are we going to ship? And we were probably at that point last year where we could have shipped. And after talking with Josh and Monona, I was like, you know what? We got something special here. We can ship this game, and it'll be always considered probably an okay shooter or something that had a little potential, and maybe there's a couple charming features. I go, you know what? Or we can go all out. I go, we can go all out, and I go, forget about the sense of sales, but just remember this. It's like we could just have a game that nobody will ever question whether we tried hard or not. They will just
true, yeah.
Be crap. These guys threw everything into it. The only game that has ever been this fun for me to make was Planescape Torment, which was probably the game that I had at least the equal or the equivalent amount of fun, because Planescape Torment was a game that it's kind of, everybody looks at it through rose-colored lenses now. It's like this the team always, whenever the team gets asked about it, it's sort of, and again, it's not rewriting history, but it's sort of this thing where everybody's like, yeah, it was this blast, and it was this amazing, and it was, but you got to understand, when Planescape Torment was being made, we were it wasn't like we were the C or D team, but we certainly weren't the premier team at Black Isle. We were, there was Stonekeep 2 going on, there was the Fallout games going on. Planescape Torment wasn't on a lot of radars. It was sort of this offshoot game in a wacky version of Dungeons and Dragons. Everybody's like, whatever. And
it had character, though. Planescape Torment knew what it wanted to be, and it had character, and that endeared it to me when I played it.
That's the one thing, what you just said is the one thing I remember from development, where because they kind of left us alone, we just ran with everything. We were like, hey, man, let's have an alley that talks to you. And everybody's like, why? Who cares? Let's do it. We just did it. Everything that we thought about, we did. And, not everything got into the game, but, man, we just went, everybody on the team just went for it at every turn. And it made the game so flippin' fun to work on, because nothing was off the table. There was no moment where you could go talk with Chris Avalon, or you could go talk with any of the designers, and they were just game for a lot of stuff. And then they'd come in and ask about stuff, getting new art or whatever. We're like, yeah, whatever, we'll do it. Who cares? They're just like, hey, the nameless one dies, and we need his body to lay in this room. We're like, okay, fine, whatever. We just didn't care. And it made the game so much fun to do. And Boss 101 has a lot of that feel where it's got the same spirit. It's obviously a different game, but the spirit of development is the same, where
that's cool.
Just have fun with it, because like I said, Planescape was about, there was the core team was 13 to 17 people, which is now that's like an indie team now.
Right.
That back in the day, that was, we were a big team, and we were wow, these are a lot of guys. The story I always like to tell about that is it was a real special group, and it was a special time. So yeah, that's what I think of. I really hope to channel with Boss 101 is to bring that development spirit in here, where you're just you don't have, there's no bad ideas. There's everybody's encouraged to sort of question and contribute in an equal way. Nobody, I feel like I would never ask anything of anybody in the group to do anything that I wouldn't do myself, and I never ask for anything that I would consider stupid. I don't. Right. There's everything is would I do this myself, or would I consider this a valuable thing to do? Well, then if I do it, then that's the only reason I'd ask anybody to help out with it in 2 days. It's definitely, when I look at stuff, time has passed, but I gotta say, I love it so much. It's so enjoyable. It's such a fun game to work on. Great art.
Awesome. It's awesome to get to talk to developers and see this kind of passion behind a project, and that's why we want to share it, because it's so inspiring to see this. So
I'd say for anybody out there too, that if anybody's ever thinking, I want to get into games or anything, I completely encourage it. It's there's no better time. It's arguably it's easier now than ever, but even beyond that, there's never going to be a magic fairy that's going to land on the end of your bed and tell you to go make games. If you feel like it's what you want to do, you should do it. When I switched from toy design to game design, video game design, I remember at the time it seemed like video games, PC games were sort of just coming around. This would have been early 90s. And I was thinking, man, I love playing games. I love playing video games. I grew up on the Ultimas and stuff, old Amiga games. And I was like, these are amazing. And obviously I came up through, my first things were consoles like Odyssey and a Atari 2600. But eventually got into computer games. And I was just like, I love these things. And I had a friend that, I remember there were people that said, a couple people were like, you're getting into computer games? Like, those are kind of ridiculous. Like, and I'm like, no, it's super fun. And I got into it, there wasn't a $1 billion industry. It was sort of like, whatever, you sound like you're going off in a crazy time.
Right.
And, because toys are toys, and video games at the time weren't that big.
Right.
But I just did it because I loved it. And it was a blast, it was so much fun, so much fun. But the point is, it's worth it. It's totally worth it. You can make a living in it. It's not impossible. I think the deal is you just got to focus on, don't look at the money as much as look at doing something you love. Because it's been said a million times, like, if you're doing something you love, the money will come. And the money does come. It doesn't always come in a big pile right away, but it does come. And you do make more than enough to live off of and more than enough to have a great life. Like, it's never been that big an issue for me in terms of money. It's always been more about, whenever I've gone after money, I've been the least happy. Whenever I've gone after just an interesting place to work, I've always had the most fun. So, the more I chase money and the more I've ever decided I'm going to play it safe, the more I end up laying in my bed at night staring at the ceiling going, shouldn't I be doing something a little different? Like, at the end of your life, it doesn't really, honestly, project ahead, it's like, you're not going to look back and go, I'm glad I played it safe all that time. You're going to look back and say, boy, I wish I'd have done a few more things that were interesting to me versus a few more things that were safer.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the philosophy now for me. It's like doing Boss 101. It's not about making bazillions of dollars. It's about like, hey man, I'm making something that I care about. This is a lot of fun. So, I feel confident it's going to do well, but at the same time, and everybody can do this. It's not impossible. It's maybe not everybody's a programmer or anybody's an artist, but everybody could do something in games, and there's an ability there to make your own game. It's possible. It very much is now, especially.
Well, Tim Donley, thank you for sharing all this stuff with us. Great insight, great passion. I can't wait.